Okay.
I think we're live.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here. How about you, Paula?
Me too. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar.
Yes, we are bringing you some really amazing information. I'm Cassandra McGlaughlin, and this is my good friend Paula Peralta. We'll give you a quick little intro about who and what we are. But first, we're just going to introduce Artists on Go, who made this webinar possible. It's an amazing platform that is really designed to help the industry and help stylists, and we'll go a little bit deeper on how they do that. But first and foremost, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Cassandra. Ta-da! I am a certified master business coach, salon owner, longtime hairdresser, color correction specialist, digital influencer. Felt like I've kind of done a little bit of everything in the industry. So it's exciting to bring a perspective on tackling some of the myths in the hair industry and then talking about some business best practices. And I am joined by the one only Paula Peralta, who has her own amazing history in the industry. We'd love to hear about it.
Amazing. What's up, everybody? Like Cassandra said, my name is Paula Peralta. I am a Los Angeles-based celebrity hairstylist as well as an independent stylist. I'm an artistic director, a brand partner. Like Cassandra, I do a lot. I'm definitely a multi-texture hairstylist, so I work with all textures, hair types. But one of my favorite things to work with are people about their lives. So I am also a certified life and business coach. And so we're going to talk about these myths because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think sometimes that's the thing that like gets our energy wonky when we're going trying to do business. And if your energy's wonky, it's really hard to provide excellent services and love what you do. So hopefully busting some of these myths today will make your life easier, your business better. So you'll be able to make more money and create a life you love.
More money and a life you love. Amen, right?
For it.
Amen. So I'm just going to do a quick intro on Artists on Go, who is bringing this webinar to us all today. It's a tech platform empowering the beauty community, and it provides technology that allows both independent artists and salon owners to succeed. So that, in a nutshell, is the mission of Artists on Go. What it really is such an amazing platform and resource for stylists to really take control of their career. And I haven't seen a software or platform like this that really gives ultimate control, financial independence, and the ability not only to create a life that you love, but to create a career that you love. And it's really geared towards all level of stylists. So we're really excited to dive in to the ins and outs on how Artists on Go can really help stylists and elevate the beauty industry, as well as debunking some myths in the beauty industry, diving into like our perspective on really where these myths can hold you back, or like Paula said, there's a lot of misinformation. And so like really diving in to the truth behind these myths, and then like also what you can do to create confidence in yourself and moving forward with your career. So 10 myths of the hair industry. Can you find freedom without sacrifice? Dun, da, da, da.
Which I feel like is already like at the top kind of a trick question, because it's like, can you find freedom without sacrifice? It's like, well, it depends on what you define sacrifice, because we all know that most hairdressers are total hustlers in the best way possible. And sometimes that does mean you have to give up certain things, but maybe it's not a sacrifice. Maybe it's like a trade-off.
Yeah.
Right? It's a prioritization based on the career you like to create.
I think prioritization and choice. I think it's like there's an intentional choice when you're going for a goal where sometimes the hustle is worth it. But I think where we don't want to get lost, and this is where some of these things that we're going to talk about, is kind of taking on a lot of external information and not making our own choices and having control of our lives, and letting these things that, you know, we're calling myths, but they're really kind of common beliefs in the hair industry that are not necessarily true, dictate like when we're going to do something, or if we feel qualified enough, or if it's like something that we even have the confidence to do. So it's really about looking at it with a intentional and kind of a critical eye and saying like, what's actually true for me? And I think that that's where we can find the freedom without necessarily going into sacrificial mode, where it's like,
Yeah, right.
I've got to give up all my time. I've got to give up all my energy. I don't have a weekend off. Like the beginning of my career, it was like, no Saturdays off, work till 11. Like it was so dictated by what I should do versus what I intentionally chose to do. So I love the idea of just diving into that altogether.
I love it.
Amazing.
Let's see myth number one.
Number one, you need to be business minded to be an independent stylist. Is this a trick question?
So I think, okay, and obviously you can read the screen, but I think it's less business minded and it's more entrepreneurial, especially if you're independent. I think that's true across the beauty industry, but when you're working as an independent stylist, like you have to have that kind of like creative approach to creating your business. And traditionally, most of us, with that said, are super creative, which means we don't always have a head for, you know, LLC creation and accounting and all of these things, but that's where you actually get to ask for help. So I think the myth here is, one, you don't necessarily need to be business minded, but also you don't have to do it all yourself.
Yes. Could not agree more. I think the idea of being like business minded, where it's like you're talking about independent stylists, it's like, well, oh, I have to run my own business. And you think you have to know like soup to nuts, like every little thing. And I think something that you said about asking for help is so important. It's like you have to have a level of organization. You have to have a level of foundational knowledge, especially financially, to be able to do like a quick little like P&L, like what's my overhead? What am I bringing in? Like, I think there are some foundational things that like, even if you're working for someone else, you should have a foundational understanding. But the great thing is with this kind of structure, you can give yourself the resources and the tools, or you can outsource them and get someone else to create the resources and the tools for you. And then you can really concentrate on building your business that you love, like concentrate on the parts of the business, whether it's the relationships, the marketing, or going into creating, you know, a new color technique. Like there's the more you create space in this world, the more you can concentrate on the things that you actually like to do. So the myth is you don't have to be business minded, but you do have to have a foundational knowledge of what will make your business successful. And that could be just asking for help and outsourcing it.
And I think, yeah, the good news is you don't need a business degree to be in business. I have a friend who always said, like, if you've got blood running through your veins and you woke up this morning, like you're in business. And so I think that's the thing is you don't, I think that what you said, the inflow versus outflow, understanding that on a base level with your business is really, really key. And obviously there are things like you need licenses and you need sales permits and things like that. But there are a lot of really great resources that can help support that.
Yeah. And I think like the idea, and this is something I think that kind of shows up in the industry sometimes, where like we tend to label ourselves as like, oh, I'm creative, so I am not this. And it's like, oh, I'm creative and I can be this. And sometimes it takes a little extra work and time to seek the information out. And I know for me, there's times where it's like, if I don't inherently understand something, sometimes I avoid trying to look at the information because it's like, I'm like, oh, I feel like inadequate, or I don't feel smart enough. Like me and taxes, like we're not friends. Like I have like such a hard time with that. So I have to outsource that. But I also challenge myself to get a foundational knowledge of certain things just so I am empowered enough to be able to have some control in my business. So I think it's not being afraid to look at those things that feel a little bit scary or overwhelming also. And like not just labeling yourself, I'm a creative, I'm an artist, I'm a this. So now I can just ignore all of these things. And so, yeah.
That is so true. And I feel like, listen, we've got 9 more myths to get through, but I just have to say one more thing about that, because what I've realized in my coaching business is that the thing that you avoid is actually what controls you. Yeah. So if you are like, even just you're talking about taxes, which I know all about that. And also I'm sure there's plenty of people on here that also can relate. But that's the thing is like, the more you avoid it, even if you're avoiding going to talk to an accountant, or you're avoiding looking at your bank account, or you're avoiding whatever it is, like that actually, as much as you don't want to admit it, like subconsciously, it's constantly playing in a loop in the back of your mind. So even if you're going out and you're trying to create, there's going to be less productivity on that front because you've got in the background this program running of like, oh, I still haven't addressed this thing. I'm trying to hide it. I'm trying to avoid it. I'm trying to do all the things. So it's like, don't avoid it. Just get someone to help you. And then be a successful.
When you actually look at it, you're like, oh, that's way easier than I thought. Like the story we make of it is so much bigger than what it actually ends up being.
Totally.
Yeah. Awesome. Any last tips on myth number 1?
I think we can consider this myth busted.
Busted. Done. Okay. Myth number 2. You'll be working alone when you're an independent stylist and have no support system or community. Independent stylists working alone. I think that's a huge myth, especially now with a lot of different salon cultures, with the salons that are participating in Artists on Go. It's like you do have an opportunity to be part of not only a community in the salon, but you can be a part of many communities in the beauty industry in many different ways. It's like kind of like alone would be a choice versus like I have to. So
I think so I in 2024 made a personal goal to do more education. And what I will say, and I work with a lot of brands, and you know, I adore my clients, like all these things, but I was looking for something else. And I will tell you that the majority of people that I see going to classes more often than not are independent stylists. And I think I love that it's on here, like take a class to meet people, talk to people who inspire you on social media. Taking classes for me has really inspired me to try new things. I've met new people. And that has been such a huge part of creating a new support system. So I think like if you're feeling alone or you're feeling like you don't have support, like honestly take a class. There's so many free classes out there. There's so many memberships and free education, as well as classes obviously that you can pay for. But I think education is a huge way to debunk that myth.
yeah. Well, and I think like there's so many different opportunities too. Like there's even like subscription education groups where like you can get on actual group calls with people. Artists on Go has an actual community. We have webinars like this where there is a community-based element to it. And I think with some of these salons too, like that foster more independence, like sometimes the independents will create their own community as well because they're all looking for that support system. And so I think the alone is like I said, it's really a choice if you decide to go into a suite and work by yourself, which I did for part of my career and I really enjoyed it. But I think I hit kind of a wall where I'm like, oh, I need to be around other people. I need other stylists. I need other hands. And so in your experience, what's some of the importance of like building community around you? Like, what are some of the things that you get out of it as a stylist?
Well, I think having a support system is really having someone to go to really like bounce ideas off of, for me, is like the biggest thing. Because even, you know, think about, well, I owned a salon, I know like you did as well, for about 7 or 8 years. And for me, it's always that moment of like when you're going to the color bar and you're like, okay, like this is the formula, this is the scenario. Like I was thinking about mixing, you know, 6N and 7NB or like what, you know, whatever. Sometimes it's more complicated than that. And there's something about that just, even though you're the one that's going forward and doing the application, and generally speaking, like your initial idea is excellent and it doesn't need any tweaks, sometimes having someone to just like bounce that off of is really key. And I think even now as an independent stylist, like I still will call my friends that are salon owners or, you know, maybe, you know, have bigger teams than I ever did, but I'll still be like, hey, how do you handle this? Or how do you price this? Or how do you approach this kind of situation with a client? It's like just that community is huge. And then I think that's not even addressing all of the things like mental health and burnout that are opportunities to solve within a support system or community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It was funny in my salon in Tampa, we kind of had this like we developed this like kind of internal lingo where some of the younger stylists that started, like it kind of started off with like, hey, can I bounce this idea off of you? And they wanted full feedback. As they grew in their career, they still were like, hey, can I bounce this idea off of you? And I'd be like, do you want my feedback or do you want me just like to validate the formula basically? And like they would like just validate it. I'm like, you got it. It's amazing. You know, and obviously if I felt different, I would say that, but it was really just like, even like that exercise of being like, hey, just give me like a check mark. Like I'm not off the rails. Like I'm good. And like,
Yeah.
it was just, it was warm and it created like a sense of team. And I think like that level of community, even if it's just one person or if it's a group of people on the internet or whatever it is, like having some sense of like, you're not alone in this is like on the mental health and the burnout side, I think really important for inspiration. Or like, you know, especially like if you have maybe a client that like came in and wasn't happy, or like you're dealing with some of those heavier things that like we inevitably carry as a hairdresser. I also think it's interesting. A lot of Facebook forums are amazing for hairdressers. People will get on there and like share and commune and have all this like information exchanged. And I think it's just by nature like what we need as hairdressers. So finding different avenues for that, I think is really amazing. Yeah.
So true.
Yay.
Did we bust the myth? I think we busted it.
We're the Mythbusters today.
I love it. That's always dreams come true.
Dreams come true. We made it. Myth number 3, you'll have to do your own laundry, stock your own back bar, and lug your supplies around. I think that this is a very common scenario for a lot of independent situations, but not with Artists on Go. That is part of the setup, and I think there are a lot of salons as well that are offering more and more amenities for independent stylists because the independent movement has been so big in our industry. Everyone wants a level of control in their career, and so being able to have these amenities, like not necessarily having to spend hours a week doing your laundry, having the salon provide that. A lot of salons are now providing back bar, or they have color available for purchase, so you don't necessarily have to carry all your supplies around. And then as a monthly renter with Artists on Go, you actually have storage space in the salon too, which is amazing. So it's like kind of the best of both worlds in a lot of ways. So yeah.
I think it's also a really interesting conversation about like value versus cost.
Yep.
Because as an independent stylist, like, I mean, for me, I use online booking and I have a whole program for that, but I sometimes, like early on, I would miss having a reservationist, or I would miss having someone wash my towels or stock my color, or making sure that now as an independent, I am the one responsible for whether or not I have that 5N for that, gray retouch that's coming in. So it is, for me, there is a value that has a cost attached to it, right? Like, so it's valuable for me to know that the color is there. So I will pay whatever is required in order to make sure I have that peace of mind. And I think that's what's really cool with what you're talking about with Artists on Go, is that you actually get to choose like what's valuable to you, what's important to you. Like, is it important to be able to drop your tools and know that when you show up the next time, they're all there? Is it valuable for you to know that you have back bar, that you have laundry, that you have, color access, whatever that is? For me, it's a yes, always. Like, yeah. the less mental load that I have to lift and carry, the better. But that's cool too, because based on what your current clientele looks like, you might be revenue, or you might be cost conscious. And so, that, as you continue to grow your business, then you can access some other amenities as you move through.
Yeah. And I think it's like what you were saying with like kind of cost versus value too. It's like energy is a cost, time is a cost, not just money. So it's like, every time I look at an opportunity, like I don't just look at the financial impact and like how much time is this going to take from me, how much energy, like you said, the mental load of it. And like that kind of accumulates into like whether like net it's worth it or not. And like when I do hair, like I get into such a hair mode that like trying to sometimes do all these other things, like when I was an independent and I had to do all of them myself, it did kind of end up being kind of stacking, where I would like my brain capacity, I'm like, I need to focus on this 10-hour color correction I'm doing, not wondering if I have clean towels available. And so for me, it was super valuable to like, when I had my salon, like one of the first things I did, I'm like, I'm hiring someone to clean the salon. I am hiring someone at the front desk. Like I took care of those kind of like satellite things to do, because it did free up so much more space to be the creative. And so it was well worth it for me. Yeah.
Amen. I love it.
Okay. Myth 3 busted?
I think so.
I think it's busted. All right. Amazing. Okay. Myth number 4. Chair rentals are more expensive. It's easier just to do commission work. And it says, what's predictable and comfortable is easy. Going independent, being your own boss can feel scary, but chair rentals are affordable with AOG. And it's really interesting because we do have some number breakdowns with this. And I think like ultimately, like expensive is relative to some degree of like what the value is, like what we're talking about. But I think that there is this inherent thought that like you have to hit a certain point at your career to be able to rent a chair. And I think with the system that AOG has, like it's a really flexible system that allows you to actually start off earlier on in your career than you would think. Because you're actually paying for the time that you use. You're not paying for a singular chair for all of eternity. And so like you really can control and plan how to create your financial aspect with this, where it's like expensive is not, it's relative. The expensive is relative. So the some of the numbers that we have that I think are really interesting, I'm gonna look at my computer right here. So on average, a typical stylist will bring in about $2,500 per week. So that's like an industry average across the nation. If you're at a 50% commission, you've got $1,250 a month coming in minus taxes. And obviously, like they're going to have some contribution to the taxes as well. A typical weekly rental with Artists on Go will be $400 to $500 depending on how much time you book. And so in that scenario, you're keeping $2,000 minus, any overhead versus keeping $1,250. And obviously you have to minus tax with both of them. So depending on how you like set up your system, how many days you work, and like the retention of your clients, there really is an opportunity to start off quicker with a chair rental, like quicker in your career, earlier in your career, without it being so scary or so expensive. But this comes back to some of the overhead situation that we talked about at the beginning. It's really owning your numbers, knowing your retention. So little statistics with that. So yeah.
Love that. Well, and that goes back to myth one, where we're talking about understanding your inflow versus your outflow. And I think I love what this says. Like, going independent and being your own boss can feel scary. And it's so true, but it like doesn't have to be. You just need to look at the numbers, and it's really like in inflow versus outflow,
Right.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think and we'll kind of dive a little bit more into like the structure of this, but because you pay for the time that you need, it's like you can kind of titrate in as well. Like if you have enough clients to fill one day, you pay for the day, and you have the clients that pay for that day. And versus, I think a lot of times with like commission salons and stuff, and I'm a fan of commission salons. I've owned commission salons. I think both independent and commission have a really relevant place in our industry. But I think it is kind of a myth that you have to start off as commission. Like that is the only way to be successful. And I don't think it is the only way. There's sometimes a lot of time. Sometimes there's a lot of kind of, I hate to say wasted time in some commission salons, where some of the younger stylists are just like waiting for the walk-ins, or they're waiting for the whatever. And instead of really getting out there and kind of hustling to build their own business, which is what I think independence kind of fosters a little bit. So I think this is a little bit of a flip on the head of like what the traditional structure could be. So it says, how has commission work changed overall in the last few years? I think it's kind of the influx of independence. Like I think it's created just more options in general. That's my thought on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what's really cool about what we're talking about here, is that if you have a bunch of independents in the same salon space, it can often create that same camaraderie and that same engagement I think that safe space that people often look for in a commission salon. So I love what you said too. Like I have worked in all of the different modalities or possibilities with salons. And I get that there's like pros and cons to all of them. But if you are one that is, like you said, building an independent, this is a really great opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's different choices. I think like there's different speeds. And I think it all comes down to kind of knowing yourself and like what path you choose to take. I had a salon where I started off as an assistant. That's a little bit more of a slow grow, but it was right at that point in my career where I needed a higher level of mentorship. When I moved, I, was like, oh, I need to start off at a commission salon because I want to be supported this way. But as the industry has progressed, I actually find like independent, like being able to start off independent and having more control is significantly more relevant for where I'm at right now in my career. So there are things too where you can process through. So myth 4, is it busted?
I think it's busted.
I think we busted it. We did it. Okay, let me get back to the right trackpad. Okay, myth number 5. You'll end up working more so that you can make enough money. I think this is a myth in general with work. Yeah. You have to like work 80 hours a week to make enough money, especially if you're getting started. But I don't think that this is true in general. I think this is actually a myth that permeates many industries.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I had gotten laid off and I decided to go to hair school. And I remember talking to an unemployment office trying to get whatever some whatever it's called, unemployment, basically. And they told me then, so first of all, they laughed at me and denied my claim because they said that the average income of a hairdresser, I think at that time, was like $18,000 or something. And let me just tell you that most hairdressers that actually probably every hairdresser I know makes way more than that. Like, so I think it's one of those things where there is still this massive myth, like you said, across the board, that like it's difficult to generate revenue as a hairdresser, and that is absolutely not true. And also, this is where maybe going back to the myth about business minded, learning to be entrepreneurial, and part of the education, maybe this is one of the education classes you take to create community, is about learning how to service, like price your services, learning about profitability and things like that, become a really big game changer. Because if you price yourself appropriately, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to work harder. You just work smarter.
Yes. Well, and like two things I want to say about that. One, I remember really early on in my career, Robert Cromings in Serious Business, like it like drilled into my head was charge more or do more. And I don't know that it's always just an opportunity to charge more, but I think the concept is like charge appropriately. And I feel like in so much of my education that I've taught, the classes, even color classes, like the number one question that comes up is around pricing, and it's like pricing appropriately. And I think it's finding that balance between being able to make the income that you want to make and also being able to draw the clients that you want with the skill set and the experience that you have. And it's like, it's kind of this like perpetual balancing game as you work up to be able to give yourself room to grow as well. And I have a really interesting example with this. So I had a stylist that worked with me for 5 years. And the first year that I had her as a stylist, she was couldn't hit over a $1,200 service month. Like that was her cap. And like she just like could not generate past that. And like I know that there was kind of this like limiting belief in there where it was like, oh, this is all I can do. And she was working part-time, and I was like, listen, there's a couple things we need to work on together. We got to get your time up, we got to get your confidence up, we got to get your dialogue. So there were some specific things that we hit, but I was like, give me 1 year of full-time work, like 1 year, and like that's like hit these points. And she worked full time, kind of against her. Like she was like, came to me crying. Sometimes she's like, I can't do this. This is so hard. But I'm like, just 1 year. And so she put the work in for that year. And she hit this point where she's like, I'm ready to go part-time again. I'm like, amazing. What do you want? And she's like, I want to work 2 days a week. I was like, all right, we're going part-time then. And I fully supported her because she had done the work she needed to do, and she had hit her number goals. Her first 2-day-a-week month, she hit her first $10,000 month.
That's amazing.
And so it's like her part-time month like exceeded her full-time month, but it was because of the front end work that she did with it. Right. So that just to me, I was just like, no, you do not have to work more. You just have to work, like you said, as smart as possible. And so we even like ran the salon off of a 4-day work week at that point. So everyone worked 4 days or less. And we were sitting at like within 9 months of opening the salon, a 10% profit margin. So it's totally possible. So that's my little story.
I love that story. Yeah. And if you're watching this now or in the future and you dream of a $10,000 a month, make sure you hire Cassandra McGlaughlin as your business coach.
Yeah, I'll take that. So this is the interesting question. What does freedom without sacrifice really mean?
I mean, I think you kind of answered it. Like, it's about getting really clear on what's required and doing the work in order to get there. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think that sacrifice thing is so weird to me because it's like, you got to do the work. Like, it's just a law of the universe. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about working behind the chair or, I don't know, building a house, like whatever it is, like it takes time and it takes effort and it takes energy. And I think, what I would just say is like anything that has a plan can come to fruition, like as quickly as you are willing to put it, like in relation to how much you're willing to put in the work. So I don't think to me, it's like not sacrifice because you're creating towards something that you want to do anyway. Like you still win at the end. So like, where's the sacrifice?
Well, and I think like you're gonna give something up somewhere. Like
Mhm.
it's either going to
Yeah.
take longer if you don't do the work,
Mhm.
or you're going to be like, struggling financially or what, like something will give. And so I think it's like, it is really reframing the idea of sacrifice. And it's like, it's only sacrifice if you don't actually want to do it. And it's
Yeah.
like, for me, it's like, if I want to create this career and I want to work part-time, but I'm just getting started, I understand the front end work that has to happen. And it is going to take time, energy, and sometimes financial investment. Those three things are not sacrifice if I'm getting what I actually want. They're
Totally.
only sacrifice if I'm doing it and I don't actually want to do it. And it's like,
Yeah.
that even shows up in relationships. It's like,
Totally.
I want you to want to do the dishes. And it's like, I don't want to do the dishes. And it's like, well, then it's a sacrifice if you do the dishes. But if you want to have a happy partnership, and something that's important is doing the dishes, then it's like, oh yeah, I actually want to do the dishes because I want this version of
Yes.
happiness. And so it takes the idea of sacrifice out of it. So I think it's significantly more of a mindset than anything.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I feel like it's so, I love that. And this has also become, I was going to say, like any of my coaching clients where we focused around relationships, like that was always the thing that came up is like, well, what do you want? Do you want to be right? Or do you want to be happy?
Right. Exactly.
Like, so I think that's the thing is like, do you want to have the business that you actually desire? Or do you want to just do you want to struggle for the entirety of your career? Like,
And like that even goes into this, like, is that actually even freedom then?
Yeah,
Like if,
exactly.
like I can sit home all day, but I'm like landlocked in my brain because I'm afraid of like not being able to pay my bills or not being able to do, like, that's not freedom either.
Yeah.
And so it's really getting clear on what both of those things are for you and like putting the work in the middle of those two.
For sure.
And then myth number 6, are we ready?
I think yes, because 5 is busted.
5 is busted. Myth number 6, if you leave your salon, your clients won't go with you. That is not true. Unless you don't have good relationships with your clients.
Yeah, right. Or you're a terrible hairdresser.
Accurate.
And I don't even mean terrible from a technical perspective. I just mean like terrible is like not a great person, because what I will tell you is even as a salon owner with stylists, like there were stylists who were so terrible technically, but they were the most warm, sweetest, kindest, like welcoming, dynamic, engaging people. And their stylists would they would follow them to the ends of the earth. Like, and so I think that's a really funny thing where it's like, if you leave your salon, your clients won't go with you. I have clients who travel from the other side of the country to come to me, but I also have clients who like won't go west of the 405 in Los Angeles. So it's, or the 405, you know what I mean? So it's like, there's always going to be those clients that like proximity and location is important to them. But for every one of those, there's 10 that will go wherever they'll bounce around as much or as little as you want to bounce around.
Well, and I think like the key point is like the relational aspect of it. Like we have the opportunity to like create an experience for the client that is kind of stylist centered or salon centered. And I think salons will create experiences where there is some attachment to the salon, but like that's where like we come in as hairdressers and like we're in it with them. And like if we listen and we create that relationship where they feel seen and they feel listened to and they leave feeling beautiful. And like I don't even know, like you said, it doesn't always come down to technical skill. It's really how we like choose to make our clients feel behind the chair. The level of loyalty that we can build is insane. Like when I moved I had a salon in Missouri and I moved to Tampa, I had 5 clients from Missouri travel to Tampa to get their hair done. And I had clients that like, she found me on Instagram. She would come from Germany to Tampa on her way to Alaska. And I was just like, listen, Mariah, if you can't do this, like, I am not going to be upset. Like, this is a big deal. I'll help you find someone. And she did it 6 times to get her color corrected. And so if there is like an attachment either to your skill set, your personality, like we both had like longtime clients. I have had clients that I haven't done their hair for 10 years. And they're like, if you ever come back, let me know, like, I will, sure thing. But there is such a connection that we can create, but that does also take intentional effort to build those kind of relationships. And like, it takes a level of confidence. And so the myth is your clients probably will go with you. Probably 90+% of your clients will go with you if you choose to leave, if you put the time and energy to build these kind of relationships with your clients.
I also think it's really about how you frame it to your clients when you do move, because if you approach it and your energy with them is really scared, like, oh yeah, like, oh, I'm moving, like, I know it's probably going to be really hard for you to like go to this new location, or like, versus like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, I'm going independent, I cannot wait for you to see this new space, it's so beautiful, the coffee is amazing, you know what I mean, like, you get an extra scalp massage, like, whatever that is, like, that energy that you bring into it is absolutely what is going to make or break that transition for your guest. So if you're willing to be excited and to show them your excitement, then that will translate into the transition of your guest from where you're at currently to, you know, whatever your independent AOG chosen spaces. So I think it really is about the energy that you bring to it. It is 1000% about the relationship, but then also about how you handle the transition with your clients.
Yeah. And I think like from a practical perspective, it's like creating like areas for celebration together, like whether you announce on social media or like the way you present it, or like you said, maybe even offering a little extra incentive to like thank them for coming with you. It's like creating those areas because people love to celebrate together. And like also they love to commiserate. And like, so if you're going there and be like, I hate this salon, I'm leaving, I don't like, I can't, and like they know you're miserable, like that's going to be such a turnoff in general. And so I think approaching it, like you said, from like a really celebratory place, an excited place, like bringing someone with you versus like, are you going to come or not? Like, or whatever kind of like attitude you can, I think is such a good point. Yeah. We all love to celebrate.
I think also too, like, be willing to give yourself space that like some of your clients will fall off. Like, it's just how it works, but you'll also be constantly getting new referrals. If you ask for them, you'll get, you know, new guests that, you know, maybe found you on social media or whatever that is, like, however it is that you market your business. Like, there are going to be people. I had clients who, like I said, I moved my business from one side of LA to the other. And what I said to my clients is I was like, just come once. Like, I know it's a trek. It's an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours in the car sometimes. And just come once. And if you don't love it, it's so fine. I'll find you another hairdresser. And anytime that happened, there were a handful that came off, but anytime that happened, they would refer to me friends that they had that lived closer to where my new salon space was, like, you know, and then eventually they'd come back. So it's exactly like you said, like, you know, you have the client that's willing to fly from Germany, but they're the one that won't drive 20 minutes. It's fine. There's plenty of clients out there that will find it's not personal. It's personal for them because they don't want to drive. That's it. It's not an indicator of you being good or bad or anything. It's just, that's it. So I think that's being willing to kind of play with that it's just part of the business.
Well, and I think it's also like having kind of a solid marketing strategy in place, like knowing that you're going to move, like anytime there's a shift, like people will shift and change. So it's like strategizing for that ahead of time, whether it's maybe start advertising in the location that you're going to be in, like that area of town, or proactively asking for referrals, knowing that like maybe 5% of your clients might drop off and be like, okay, what is that? Do I need 3 more clients a week to make up for that? Or what is that? So you can start proactively strategizing. And 2 things that I think are so overlooked, and you mentioned one of them is referrals, like asking for referrals or creating some kind of referral program. Like statistically, clients are going to fall off, move or not. Like that's going to happen. Life's going to change. They're going to move, something. So having some kind of replenishment and referrals are such an amazing way to do that. And then the other low hanging fruit is rebooking. Like rebooking your clients on a regular basis. Like do not forget to get them on the books with the next time. That actually creates less space for you having to find new clients regularly. So I think if you're worried about your clients leaving, like number one, keep the clients that you have, get them to give you more clients, and then work on a marketing strategy. And then also don't be afraid of that because they're all going to love you and come with you.
So I have clients who, like, since I started, I mean, even it's probably been 15 years, like, and I've changed location probably 4 times, and I have clients that have still been with me that whole time. So it is a myth, and it is, like you said, about building relationships, and then also just clear communication, and then the energy that you bring to it. I also saw in the chat, hello, thank you so much. They said that it's great to hear your wisdom on these myths. Thank you for sharing. So if you're listening to us now, we can't see you, but we'd love for you to pop in the chat and let us know where you're from, where you calling in from or streaming in from. on the webinar. So we'll come back to that. Let's hear myth number 7.
Myth number 7. Transitioning from commission stylist to independent stylist is hard and takes a lot of time. What are your thoughts on this?
Myth. It's so funny because some of these I'm like, I know people that would say something like that, but it's such a myth. It's such a myth. And I think like ultimately it really comes down to like it's only as hard or as easy as you're willing for it to be.
Yep.
So if you want it to be easy, then you bring that energy of like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. It's going to be so easy. And then really it just becomes about exploring your options. And I think that's what's really cool about from, what I know with Artists on Go is that you have so many choices. Like, do you want a big salon? Do you want a small salon? Do you want, late hours? Do you want early hours? Do you want whatever that looks like? You can curate and really shift your business experience to whatever it is that you want it to be. So I think it's like, it doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah. There's a saying where it's like something along the lines like difficulty will happen, but suffering is optional. Like something like that. And I think this is kind of the same thing. It's like the hard is optional. Like hard is how you view it, like you said. And so I think there's a couple practical steps like of being intentional, planning it out, like maybe not like making decisions on the fly without some kind of like buffer or cushion where you're like, okay, I know I have this amount of time to transition, or I'm financially stable for this amount of time. So if there is a little dip, I'm okay. And so creating like a strategy and a plan will be able to like kind of keep your head in the game. But I think if you're constantly telling yourself like whatever you say is going to be true. This is hard. This is hard. This is hard. This is hard. Everything around you going to be like, okay, let's show you how hard this actually can be.
Yeah.
And like you'll get all the things thrown at you. But if you have the idea, like, let me see how easy this could be, or let me see how fun this could be, and like create an idea of fun and joy and around a transition. And like, even what we were talking about with sharing with the clients, having a level of celebration, like that will bleed onto you as well. And so like embracing the change, also understanding there will be ebbs and flows, like in any business venture. I think we all have a moment where like, what do we do? Like, why are we doing this? Like that happens sometimes, like, because things can be scary, especially going into an independent structure where if you're in a situation where someone else took a lot of the responsibility and all of a sudden you're like, okay, now it's on me. But there's so many resources in order to make the transition so much easier. One thing I love with like Artists on Go, and we've mentioned this quite a few times, is like there is so much control over only paying for the time that you need behind the chair and like being able to curate the salon environment that you, like you said, like there are so many things that like you can put those pieces into place. Like I have control over this. So any of the variables are significantly less scary because you have this plan and structure in place. So yes.
Absolutely. I love that.
Love it. We busted it. All right. Myth number 8. We busted it. No matter how much you actually want to work, you'll have to pay a full month's rent. That's not true with Artists on Go specifically.
Yeah, not at all.
Yes, which I think is like, to me, I mean, there's a lot of benefits, but the innovation is paying for the time that you use behind the chair, like period. And I think a lot of salons don't, the technology and the booking is what allows you to do this with ease. And like, if you go inside, you can take a quiz on artistsongo.com, get matched with different salons and kind of poke and prod and explore. But when I looked at like the booking software and how it worked, it's so seamless the way it communicates between the salon and the stylist, where it takes so much of the work out. And like, if someone had to do this without this platform, it would be a scheduling nightmare. Like it would be so hard, like to book the shifts and to book the hours and book the days. So like the ease of being able to pay for hours, days, or months, it's like, I don't know. And like, it seems so simple, but it's also like such an innovation at the same time where I'm like, duh. Like, it's like really, it's like you pay for the time that you need. And so I think like ultimately the financial flexibility, the scheduling flexibility is so amazing. And like, you're not beholden to thousands of dollars worth of rent right up front when you don't have the clientele to support that. Like you can customize the rent to the clientele that you actually have, which I think is so amazing.
Yep. And that's where, like, going back to what you said, I think back in the beginning, whichever myth it was that we busted. But
Oh,
when you look at this, it's like whether you are just starting out in the industry or you've been in the industry for a long period of time, like you can still curate a schedule and a situation that actually works for you. And I think that's ultimately the most empowering thing. And that's where that's where the true growth starts to show up. Because if you're starting off, small with your clientele, but you're looking to grow, having a lower, or I guess a set rate for renting that isn't, you're not wasting time, which means you're not wasting money, it sets you up to win. So long term, you're going to be in a better situation financially and with your business overall.
yeah. I remember the first time I went into booth rental, which it was long enough ago, and I was in a very small town that my rent was $250 a month. It was like, yeah, but I was starting from such scratch. Like I had my home rent, my booth rent, I had to buy color, and the first month behind the chair I made $350. So like when you had like 350 but 250 was booth rent, and the way because I had to pay for the full month, it's like, what is that? 90% of my income went to rent. So like even at the small numbers, I was just like, God, what am I gonna do? And of course, like with me, I was just like, that's never gonna happen to me again. And the next month, it was like $1,000, and then like I grew from there. But being in that, I'm like, that would have been a totally different ball game if I actually would have paid for the time behind the chair, because I had probably had 2 clients that whole month, like 3 clients as I was building. And so it's just such an interesting concept to be able to have that level of control and like autonomy. And like, one thing that you talk about is like really creating a life that you love, like a life you don't want to like vacate from. And like time is such a big part of that, like controlling your time, controlling your schedule, and just having like kind of the mental freedom, knowing that you're not paying for time that you're not using, I think is so huge. It creates such a value to our time and what we're doing tw. So
Love that.
did we bust it? Is it busted?
Busted. Next.
Okay. We need like a little bell. Ding.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding. Myth number 9. You can't be an independent stylist when you're first starting out. You can only be an assistant. True or false?
False.
False. That is false.
Yeah.
I mean, I think assisting is a really specific path. Like it's not for everyone.
And I think too, like even it's really about getting creative, I think, even if you are assisting, because I know when I had my commission salon, sometimes there wouldn't be a chair for the assistants, right? Like the stylists are running at such high capacity that there's not a chair. And I think this is actually really cool because there could be a world where you're assisting, but also with Artists on Go, you can rent a chair. So if you do, if for whatever reason, if there's a chair that's not available, or you're not sure and you want to see what else is out there, like this is a great opportunity to like, I'm a girl that likes to have her cake and eat it too. So like in that situation, I'll be like, yeah, I'll assist and, learn and be mentored and also explore this independent life and see what that's like. And so I think there's a thing where, yes, you could go on fully independent. I'm not saying you have to assist, but I'm saying if you wanted to, you could. And that I think would be a really brilliant way to, have a low lift and be able to go out and explore what it's like to be an independent stylist, but also still have, the safety of assisting in a commission salon.
Well, I mean, I think like the magic of all of this is just choice. Like there's a million choices in the interim, and it's not about having to be one or the other, all or nothing. And so I think with even the idea of combining the two, it's like you can get the best of both worlds in that. And if you do want to go independent, like having the ability to control the amount of time that you pay for, I feel like I sound like that. The overhead is probably one of the biggest obstacles to going independent, is being able to like financially like pay this money out without necessarily having the income. If you have commission, the income, and then the money comes out of the whatever that is. And so I think like being able to have like a level of micromanaging the control and the time and the overhead. And then if you do need to do other things like assist in the meantime, like you could have such a set schedule where it's like, I'm paying for these 3 days a week behind the chair, and then I'm assisting these 3 days a week or whatever it is. It's like you can curate the career that you want and how you do it. And like how fast you build is going to be dependent on so many different things. But like it's got this ability to have like just such like kind of like micromanaging control over it, which is amazing. Yeah.
We love it. As a recovery control freak, I approve that message.
Yeah. I am not recovered control freak.
As a not yet recovered control freak, Cassandra also approves that message.
I approve. I am a current control freak. So it's up on my brain scan. It's true. Okay. Is myth number 9 busted? Did we do it?
I think we busted it.
We busted it. Amazing. Okay. The last myth in the group. You won't be able to grow your clientele as an independent stylist because you will not be taking walk-ins. Ooh, the walk-in story. The salon's supposed to give me walk-ins. I need the walk. Like, where are these walk-ins? Where?
I truly don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because the majority of my guests, and I always say this to stylists as well, like I did it when I owned my salon, and then also for myself, is like to get out in the world. And I know this is like social media is an amazing tool, and yes, we'll come back to that because I know like you're like the OG, one of the OG like hairdressers that was on Instagram, like one of the first and best to ever do it in my opinion. But the other thing for me is I'm like, if I start to feel like, ooh, I need to like, amp up my clientele again, or I need to start finding some new clients, like I force myself to go out into spaces that are around my studio. Like, it could be a restaurant, it could be a coffee shop, a bar, businesses. And you'll start talking to people like, hi, how are you? Oh, I love your hair. Oh, whatever the situation is. And then it inevitably comes back to you being a hairdresser and great. Here's my card. Here's my Instagram. Here's whatever. I can't tell you the number of clients that I've gotten. I mean, I probably could. I'd have to run the report, but like from that alone, just literally talking to people and engaging with the world. So I think this idea of like a walk-in, it is absolutely not the most effective way to build your clientele. The most effective way is for you to get out into the world and engage.
And I think with walk-ins too, it's like, you don't know who that is. You don't know like the rapport. You don't know you don't have the opportunity to curate your clientele at a level that like is a match where you can build those long time relationships. And like, yes, walk-ins can and walk-ins are relevant. But I think if you're really looking to grow a clientele in a long-term career, being able to customize and curate your specific like niche clientele, like I think is so important. And you can do that through social media. But I agree. I think especially in these days, like having a social presence is like a non-negotiable, but I think the art of being able to network outside in person is so valuable. Like that is like, it's like we're returning back to the basics. Like when I first started my career, like that $350 month that I had the next month, I like printed out these little flyers and I was like free brow wax with a haircut. I walked all over that town and like met people. I was just like everywhere. And I was like, that's how I built a clientele really quickly. I built a full clientele in like, I think like 3 months, 6 months. I was like out there pounding the pavement. And, Paul and I were just in New York and we were out and someone complimented on her hair. They're like, I love your hair. And then it turns into a whole other conversation. And so I think like having ourselves out there, like having our presence and being approachable and like creating those conversations is such a valuable way to create a clientele that we actually love. And then we go to social media. Couple really quick and easy tips with social media, because I do think it's a harder ocean to stand out in these days than it ever has been. But I think it's about posting the hair that you really love to do, like finding that aesthetic, finding that look. I think it's positioning yourself as an expert, and sometimes that involves, creating like before and afters or tips and tricks, things like that. And like for me, I find it hard. Like I don't always get like wrapped up in like the latest trends on social as far as like the dancing and the whatever. It's like pick a goal. Like, do you want visibility or do you want to build a clientele? If you want to build a clientele, you speak to them. If you want visibility and you want to go viral, that's a different direction. But like, don't get discouraged when you're comparing building your clientele to someone who's trying to go viral. Like pick your lane with that. And then also realize social media sometimes is like the backup. Like you'll meet someone in person and then they're going to look you up on social, or like someone's gonna refer you, and then they're gonna look you up on social. So having a portfolio that's like visible and beautiful, it's not dependent on the number of followers. It's not dependent on the number of views. Sometimes it's just about the visibility with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like it's so easy to compare someone's like overnight success, but then not see like the years of work that they've put into it. And I saw something recently that was like, yes, like everything is an overnight success because there's like one night where suddenly the switch flips. But leading up to that overnight success is like days, weeks, months, years, sometimes of creation and hustle and recreation and mentorship and grind, and it's that thing. So I think that for me a lot of times as I'm talking to people is the thing that stops them the most is they're comparing themselves to everyone else instead of just start. It's fine, just do that first post. One post will be two, then two will be four, like it'll continue to grow, but you got to start.
Yeah.
Give yourself permission to be bad.
Yeah. I think it's almost like the action of like putting the blinders on and like just doing it anyways. Like, I mean, being an influencer since 2013, it's like so hard not to go into comparison and like, what's this person doing? And should I do this? And like, mine doesn't look the same or whatever. And it's like, the second I get into that, like it tanks my motivation. And so it's like, you just got to like put the blinders on and do the work and like understand what you're working towards. Like you want financial independence. You want this level of freedom. You got to do the work. You got to put the time in. And so I think it's keeping the eyes on the prize. That is
on the prize.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So we busted 10 myths in 1 hour.
I mean, listen.
Like how good are we?
So good.
So good. So this was a really exciting conversation. I think a lot of these things, they're easy to talk through. A lot of them I think are centered around mindset. It's like really like getting clear, getting aligned, getting intentional, and then also like building confidence in yourself and then taking that kind of like scary step forward, that one step forward where it's like, I'm going to do this anyways because I believe in myself. And so the myths have been busted. We did such a good job with it.
Mythbusters will be so proud of us.
I know. They're going to call us soon.
That'll be amazing. I can't wait. I need a lab coat and some goggles.
That's our next webinar.
We should. I know. I was like, we should have brought them for this one.
I know. Okay, so in wrap up, first of all, if you're watching the replay or you're watching live, thank you so much for spending this time with us. It was such a pleasure. And go on artistongo.com. There are so many resources and so much information. It is really got such amazing solutions for anyone who wants to go independent. There is a quiz where you can match with the salon and just poke around, take a look. There's some really exciting things happening this year with Artists on Go too. There's some expansion, some partnerships, things like that are on the horizon that you do not want to miss. So make sure that you go on the website and you connect, and it gives you the opportunity to really start to custom curate your career. Oh, that's a tongue twister. Custom curate your career. Yeah. Thank you so much to my BFF, Paula Peralta. Amazing, wonderful individual. Thank you for spending your evening with us. It has been such a pleasure, as always, to teach with you.
Love it.
And yes. And tell everyone where they can find you, any contact, anything exciting we have going on, anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on Instagram at the Paula Peralta. You can also email me, Paula at paulaperalta.com if you have questions. But honestly, DM on Instagram is probably the easiest. And Cassandra and I are working on a program around burnout, which we're super excited about. She'll be at Premier Orlando launching that. I will be elsewhere. But if you're going to be in Orlando, make sure to check that out with us. And then also just connect with us on social because we'll give you all the information. But if you want to talk with me, go to follow the Paula Peralta, which is here on the screen.
Yes. And you can find me at Cassandra Platinum. Paula and I have some really exciting things coming. Like she said, there's a program on burnout. We're really working hard to bring really relevant kind of combo business information to the industry where it's not just business and technical. It's really centered around mindset and creating an empowered lifestyle and an empowered career. And we are Technically, I am, but together we are co-creating a program on burnout that's launching in Premiere Orlando. I will be the solo rep with that, but it is going to be from the brains of Paula Peralta and I. And it is so exciting to be able to bring some of this information to the industry. It's really about not only recovering from burnout, but preventing it. And I think that that's super relevant because we are all such givers. We love to give, give, give. And sometimes we give until we have no more. But you can find me on Instagram at Cassandra Platinum. Make sure you follow us both, and we will be able to keep you up to date with all the cool things that we have going on. And a huge thank you to Artists on Go for facilitating this amazing conversation. And we love you all. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.